Dear friends. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she and they. I'm calling from the lands of the Abenaki people, also known as New Hampshire. I'm in Morning Sun Mindfulness Center, and Aurora is sitting just across the room in my little cabin. Um, I would like to first invite three sounds of the bell before I share about tech and introducing our friend Aurora for the day. I invite you to find a comfortable position for your body. And if you've already found that position, to invite your hips and your knees and your ankles to ground and heavy, to release, to find freedom inside of your breath as we listen to the sounds of the bell together. Inviting our land ancestors, our blood ancestors, and our spiritual ancestors to join us as we gather in mindfulness for the next 90 minutes to take good care of ourselves, to become more in touch with ourselves and with our Sangha body, and to take refuge in the practice. So many of you already know tech very well. Few simple reminders is to keep yourself on mute until you're speaking in Dharma sharing or in introductions. And I invite you to keep your Zoom settings on speaker view until Dharma sharing, and then being in gallery view might be nice so that you can see other people's body language. If you have any questions at all during the call, please send me a direct message. I'm here for tech support, and my name on the Zoom call is Sarah Tech Support. So you can send me a private message at any time, and I'm happy to help you out. And we are recording this. It will be available on our YouTube channel later, but Dharma sharing won't be recorded. So now I would like to take a few moments to introduce our teacher of the day, Aurora. Aurora is my neighbor in Morning Sun, and she lives just about a 3-minute walk up from my cabin. So Aurora Leon was born in Mexico. She lives in Morning Sun Mindfulness Center, which is a lay practice center in the Plum Village tradition. She practices as a plant-based primary care physician, supporting people get healthier. She loves to hike and run. She's an OI member helping facilitate Sanghas, and she was a co-founder of Wake Up New York. She also participates in the plant-powered branch of the Earthholder Sangha, Sangha de las Americas, and organizes retreats in Morning Sun. She helped organize the Wake Up Tour in Latin America in 2014, in Mexico in 2016, and the Appalachian Trail Retreat in 2018. And we hope to have another Appalachian Trail Retreat soon. She was part of the Nomads Clinic in 2019 with Roshi Joan Halifax, a medical expedition in the Himalayas offering compassionate medical care for Nepali people. Her aspiration is to keep growing, deepening her sense of belonging and no separation. So our general schedule for today will be Aurora leading us in practice for the next 40 minutes and an introduction and transition into Dharma sharing. And after Dharma sharing, we'll have sharing the merit and introductions and announcements. I would like to invite one sound of the bell, and then Aurora may unmute herself.
Hello, dear Sangha. I'm so happy to be here. I see a lot of pictures of nature, and that's really inspiring. And I also feel connected to that. As Sarah shared, I'm coming here from the Abenaki land. And I wanted to say a couple like disclosures or things before. My heart is pounding and I get sometimes really nervous when things are going to be recorded forever in the YouTube like live. And then I can see it and be self-inflicting judgments. So that's that. And so I wrote what I was going to say, because sometimes that comes when I run or when I do things. And then sometimes that doesn't come that easily when I'm faced with like being videotape or like with other people in a camera or in a Dharma hall with friends. With the strangers, it's easy, but with friends in the past, sometimes I get a little bit intimidated. So if you see me reading once in a while, that's for me to keep my train of thought. And my intention is to really express what's true in me and not to be embedded in my forgetfulness or stress. That's one. And the other thing is like, I want to name that this month I feel very inspired by what we're celebrating. I mean, not everyone, but like in general, one of the celebrations that we're having is to celebrate courage and to feel how, and to allow people to live freely. Especially ourselves, like how can I allow myself to be genuine and free? And I'm talking about Juneteenth coming up. And I'm also talking about Pride. So I feel very inspired by the people in the past that have fought for freedom and being authentic. My given name is Aurora and my true name is True Blue Swan. I'm very moved here to share about this theme about grief and how it's like a healing universal experience. I have encountered grief many times in the hospital, in a room, as an immigrant to this country, and just as a human being, seeing impermanence in general, like seeing nature, how it's impermanent. My heart has always felt attracted to this issue, so I have always tried to be near where people are dying. I see loss and dying as an equalizer, like as a great equalizer. Like when we are faced to that, it gives us perspective to our lives and kind of gives us a balance. It's like a wake-up call. It's like a stopping, and everyone like is sometimes big that sometimes everyone stops Like death is omnipotent force and is there all the time, inescapable. It's looming. We're all going to that. And throughout the history also, it has been for marginalized people not equal. It has also been like marginalized people feel or face death and loss in not equal basis as privileged people. They normally have friends and family dying younger. They have more deaths. They're more sudden and more abrupt. And we don't have the systems to support them. So compared to privileged people, I will say that that's not equal or equalizer. And what happens is like something called compound complex trauma. So just trauma after trauma after trauma. So there's a lot of grief. And when I'm saying this, there's a part of my body that just wants to fix it and wants to change it and wants to do something. And my brain starts to separate into good and bad and like very bipolar things or separate things. And if I go in my mind, I go in this track of trying to fix it, trying to move it, trying to do something. But if I come back to my body and I stop and I breathe, and that's what grief does, like it comes or it helps us to come back to the loss. And when we feel loss, for me, it feels like sometimes like a punch in the stomach. Or like when I'm talking about these inequalities, it feels like a punch in the stomach. I cannot believe it. I don't want to believe it. I want to be in denial. And that's the first kind of period of grief, is just like being in the loss and that part and that like empty thing. And the mind at that moment can also go into regrets and like judgments. And it's kind of very cool that when we're very open and very raw, the mind goes in like, oh, I should have do better. Should have done this. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe this and that. And in these moments or difficult moments is when the practice become very literal for me. When I read Thai's calligraphy and says like, breathe, my dear. In that moment, it's not a koan, it's nothing in the future. It's like in that moment, it's like breathe. Breathing and breathe out. It's now later, it's very literal, like in those moments. And when I talk about loss, it's not only when people die. We associate that with people dying, but if we lose a friend, if we move up a country, our loss of identity, our able bodies, or like when we lose a part of our body, or start like a loss of capacity, moving from country to country, moving from a house, relationships and friends, when a pet transitions. So we have all felt, and that's why it's very universal. It's grief, you can feel it from the small things to the very big things. And this year, we have faced the changes and the loss very greatly. So that's why I thought it was relevant to talk about it. Because sometimes with grief, what happens is like, because it's kind of, it's omnipotent, it's everywhere, but then it can be very subtle and we can deny it or like go for something or go running or go and eating or go and in the internet. So it's very easy not to stop and live it because it's very hard, or at least that's how I feel it sometimes. I don't want to be there and I want to run. So my body has a lot of resistance. So that's why I say, like, why is I feel that is the greatest experience of healing And one of the things, because for sure is one of the hardest fires that you're going to encounter. It burns and it fires. It goes across borders. It goes across generations. It goes even through our own layers of protection. It makes us so vulnerable, or it makes me so vulnerable and open. There is a very scary place to be. And even though it's scary and it's so open, that my true self is there. Our true nature is showing up without makeup, without trying to be or trying to do it hard. It's just there. And I think that's why I find it so, I would not say important, but like a great or privileged opportunity when someone is going through grief to be there, because we're in the raw experience of that self. And as human beings, because we have felt lost in the past or in the future, or we have done that process, our brain connects and we can be there with the other person. Grief is very unpredictable and it's uncontrollable. It's like a stream that runs through your body and it doesn't go away and it will not go away. The thing that changes is how we relate to the thing that is happening. So that's why I think it's the greatest healing experience, because it's present, it's not moving. When you go to sleep, it's there. When you wake up, it's there. When you go to do a reading, it's there. When you go for a swim, it's there. Like a very faithful dog. He wants you to be awake. And the only way to go through it is right through the middle. Like it's an invitation, it's a teacher, and it's not the most cozy teacher, even though like it's hard. At the end, we find compassion and we found life can open in different ways. Grief has access to certain parts of our body or mind that normally we don't have access. Like if in our general life, and if we take awareness and mindfulness through that journey, the path of grief can be very wholesome. Grief can give us this profound understanding that that we're impermanent and that everything is impermanent. And that understanding that we're not separate from everyone, because grief affects us and affects the people grieving and the people around it. So if we have our capacity, or if I surrender to grief, then life can come very vibrant. Because after I know that there's impermanence, I want to live, I want to love, I want to hug, I want to have joy. There's a very famous Buddhist story that you may all know that talks about this. It's when Kisa Gotami lost her child, her only child. She was getting very mad. She became very desperate, and because of the loss, and people thought that she lost her mind because she was trying to find her boy all the time. So people told her to go and see the Buddha. And the Buddha said, I can bring back your child if you bring me a white mustard seed of a family that has not have death or find death, or no one has died. So she was like, fine, I'm gonna find it. So she desperately went from house to house to house. And you know the story, right? Because of her disappointment, she didn't find the house that no one has suffered. So she finally realized that we are all mortal. We all die. So when she came with that realization to the Buddha, she comforted her and she awoken and she was enlightened. And I think it's that because of that realization that everyone goes through it. And that's why I say that it's a great equalizer, because we have all faced it and we can be together in that. We don't have to do it alone. And that's why talking about grief is an important part, because we all sometimes, especially in certain cultures, is something that you go through alone and in closed spaces. In other cultures, like for example, in my culture, sometimes, even though that happens a lot, like we close it, like grief is seen close, we have the day of the death and we bring that up and we bring our mortality on and off. Something also that's important to know is that when we lose a job, a relationship, or a person that has died, that loss is not just finite. You don't feel that loss just in that moment. You're feeling the loss over and over and over on a period of time, like when you remember the person or when you're doing something. And so you're painfully confronted with that issue, or like with that loss. So there's a lot of taking space for that, and a lot of grace and patience. That sometimes patience is where you don't want to be. Like in that moment, you want to change it, you want to fix it. Or for me, I want to fix it, I want to change it, I want to sit better to be a better practitioner and make it end. But sometimes patience is just being there with being uncomfortable. And sometimes if we're accompanying someone through that, is being there, feeling uncomfortable with that person. John Halifax is a great teacher that has looked into this issue a lot. And she says this: I look at grief as a great opportunity for us to, in ways that are not easy, to have our heart open, not simple break, to break open. And I also look at grief as an opportunity for us to touch into feelings that are calling to be explored in a way that is tender and courageous. So when the Buddha was out of his palace, he saw four things, right? One was a man that was sick. Then he saw a corpse, and a man with old age, and an ascetic. So basically he was moved by grief. Like he saw all of these things that could be lost. And when he came back, he couldn't be the same. Like it was not the same. So change and impermanence is in our face. And when we see that, when we see the impermanence, when it happens to us and we see it so vividly or so raw, there's no coming back. Like life is going to be changed. And through grief, we can embrace life fuller, to live again. And the energy that we've been using to resist or not to be with it and to fight it can be used in order to generate more life in our lives. And when this happens, it doesn't mean that if someone died, or like a pet died, or like a relationship or something, it doesn't mean that we abandon that person or that being. It will stay with us, but in that moment that we realize that is when our relationship, instead of being outside, it becomes inside. The relationship starts like inside of us. And in that moment is when we realize that that love is not dying. And I think in that moment is when it's appropriate to say a cloud never dies. I have encountered, like, sometimes when people die, especially in the practice, they will say like, oh, but don't worry, a cloud never dies. I think that's not very empathic to say when we're in loss and we're in period of grief. It's something that people can find out, and it's an insight that Thai is offering us, but not for us to just put it there and say something because we didn't know what to say. Another saying, or another person that writes about death, it says, grief is like the ocean. It comes in waves, ebbing and flowing. Sometimes the water is calm, and sometimes it's overwhelming. All we can do is learn to swim. And yesterday I was listening to Thai, to a Dharma talk, and I was a little bit surprised because somehow, I had this realization that somehow I understood that with mindfulness or being calm or breathing in and breathing out, the emotion will not be that intense. And actually what Thai says, like, you have to prepare for the storm. Like, it's gonna come, it's gonna be a storm. So it's like, oh, it's still, even if I'm mindful, even if I'm calm, it's gonna be strong. The emotion is gonna be strong, and that's okay. It's okay to have strong emotions. We are all equipped for that, and that's why we practice. Life has this way of unfolding that is meant to, and it's meant for us to learning and grow. So sorrow, grief, deep suffering is definitely a place of being stripped away. And that's where I want to meet you, because those are the hard love places to be. Hard to love places to be. There's a book like that, and I really like that title, because I want to meet you there where it's hard to love and it's hard to be. Because somehow is where I get meaning, and I'm inspired because of the rawness of our true selves. And I really like this phrase, like, let's break together. We don't have to break apart. We don't have to break alone. It's like, let's break together in order to let all our things from outside and the layers, the multi-layer person that we are, like, break open, and in that rawness meet. And yes, this is a roller coaster, and this is where we put into practice all the cushion times and cushion hours that we do. And I think it's worth it. Thai talks a lot about different practices that we can do for strong emotions. Sometimes the strong emotions and loss and grief can be very humbling experience. It can bring us to our knees. And Thai always says that a good practitioner knows how to suffer well. And impermanence is inevitable, and it's going to come. It's not a matter of what, but a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when it's going to come. And to think, it's time for us to think of our own impermanence. Sometimes that's easier, or like it happens more fluent when our parent dies, because then we're kind of the next, the buffer goes away. And my aspiration also is to be prepared for my own death, in order to feel free with it, which is not easy because it's our greatest fear. So sometimes Zen masters do a haiku that is like a death poem when their last teaching or when they're gonna die. This is one by Kosan. This is a famous one. Empty-handed, I enter to the world. Barefoot, I leave it. My coming, my going, to simple happenings that got entangled. That was in the 1360s, he died. And there's invitations of writing our own haikus every year that we go older. And I'm gonna share you mine that I did when I was 37. And that's why this has to have a number there. Interbeing, 37 miles more to run. I am ready. I have been waiting for you all my life. Are you sure? And one from Ramdas is, we're all just walking each other home. And I find it also very interesting that even though that we know that, or I know that I'm gonna die, I really wanna grasp to the permanent nature of myself or the things that are around me. So the 5 remembrances are a great practice for us to start to go into these spaces of letting go. I think for me, the one that is very difficult is to grapple with sickness. Like when I'm practicing and I'm saying like, I'm the nature to grow old. This body is a nature to grow old, but this body is a nature to have sickness. My brain disconnects and like I feel it, like fall asleep or go run like another way and then it comes back. So it's a good practice thinking about our own impermanence. I will offer a guided meditation about grief. So if you want to feel comfortable, sit comfortable, something that supports you. And if the words that I say will resonate with you, take them. But also an invitation is for you to bring your own experience, your own language of meditation around grief and loss and how that feels in the body. So breathing in, feeling your strong back. And breathing out, allowing your front to be soft. And letting the breathing take over or sweep your mind. And notice if your in-breath is a long breath or a short breath. And start with remembering, why are you here? Like, what's your intention? And maybe allow your body to express it first before you name it. With what is calling you in your body. And with this on this grounded body, I will invite you to recall a moment of loss or losses that have really touched you. Or maybe it's the anticipation of a loss that is touching you. And I will share some phrases around grief. May I be open to the pain of grief. Notice what happens with that phrase and without rejecting or clinging. Just notice. May I be open to the sorrow, to the pain of grief. May I find the inner resources to really be present for my sorrow. May I find the inner resources to really be present with my sorrow and pain. And notice if there's any resistance that arises, and that will also pass. It will pass. May I accept my sadness. Knowing that I am not my sadness. May I accept my sadness. Knowing that I am not my sadness. And if you have cared for someone and felt like it has not always been easy, or it was not easy, maybe you will reflect on, may I forgive myself for not meeting my loved one's needs. May I forgive myself for not always being able to meet my loved needs. And may I forgive myself for mistakes made and things left undone. May I forgive myself for mistakes made and things left undone. May I be open with others and with myself about my experience of loss. May I be open to receive kindness of others as they support me in this journey. May I be open to receive the kindness of others that are supporting me in this journey. May I and all beings learn from and transform sorrow. May I and all beings learn from and transform sorrow. Again, noticing whatever is arising, whatever thoughts they are, without clinging, without resistance. And going back to your body, how is your body? How does your body feel or experience this? And feel your body if there's an opening or possibility to think about grief as a humanizing experience. Bringing greater depth into our lives in order for us to live fuller and without hesitation. So I hope this was helpful, like as an invitation and experiment. Grief is one of those experiences that cannot be captivated by the words. Poets and philosophers tried to explain it, and there's a lot of symptoms. There's a lot of phases about grief that theory got debunked because grief is all over the place and moves and goes and ebbs and flows. And it's a rite of passage that the person that is going through it moves us and moves around, and we get touched by it. And I will never turn away an invitation to grieve genuinely together. because I think my body and my life has been shaped by and is shaped from it. So it's an invitation to allow the painful and the sorrow are opening keys for your great compassion. And I wish that you may continue to cultivate compassion, strength, equanimity, and kindness. Thank you for being so kind with me.
We'll invite Aurora to offer any closing words and a sharing of the merit before I invite us to offer introductions. That way, if any of you need to leave very soon, we can feel the practice space close up a little bit. So I'll bow out. Thank you.
Sure. I think one closing thing is that for grief, for sorrow, for deep suffering, is so important to move our body. It's not about forgetting about the thing, but we need a break, and movement, dancing, music, all of that is very nourishing to support you in order to continue to be there. The most important is showing up, and you're there. It is there. But I just want to remind us and remind me to move, to play. Naomi said something that I said that reminded me that said that as a good practitioner, we also have the capacity to produce joy. And yesterday in a Dharma talk, Tai, he was talking about how suffering is the side of joy or happiness. So without suffering, there's no happiness. So if we have suffering, there will be happiness. So we just have to like produce it and transform it. And we have that capacity. So for me, that's given me aliento. I don't know how to say it in English now. Like faith or capacity or like hope that is gonna be good. It's gonna be well. Everything's gonna be well. And I'm gonna share the merit. This merit comes from the One Earth Sangha. May all places be held sacred. May all beings be cherished. May all injustices of oppression and devaluation be fully rightened, remedied, and healed. May all the wounds of the forest, rivers, deserts, oceans, all wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song, bird song, blue sky. May all beings abide in peace and well-being, awakened and be free.